Northamptonshire Youth Justice Plan. And if I could ask Councillor Bowen to move the report, if she would.
Okay, so I'm doing this on behalf of Fiona Baker. Just for a point of interest, this has already been to Cabinet, for those that have attended Cabinet in the past, and we have had a lot of questions before, so I'm not anticipating many questions. So in terms of every youth offending service across England and Wales must produce one of these annual plans, and the purpose of the report is to highlight what has happened so far and provide a plan going forward. So this plan is a very positive programme, so I'm pleased to bring this forward, and that brings together a number of organisations, that being NCC, the police, Magistrates Youth Court, Northampton Borough, Community Safety Partnership, East Midlands Ambulance Services, and schools across the county. So what this is about is collaboration and building relationships between all those organisations. At the heart of all this is proactivity. Prevention by early intervention. We want to keep young people out of the criminal justice system, and where it does happen, we need to do everything we can to stop that repeat offending behaviour. The Sharing Knife Crimes Initiative is one such great example. It's called Knives End Lives, and as we all know, knife crime has escalated to a worrying level in this county and in the country as well. Northamptonshire is actually leading edge in this area. It's one of our success stories, and those involved should be proud of what has been achieved so far, but knowing that there is still much to be done. So I commend this plan to Council.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Councillor Golby to second the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to second the report. And the first thing I want to say is that the Northamptonshire Youth Justice Plan and the Youth Service is something we should be celebrating. Yes, we know there's some challenges in there, and the service knows those and can clearly articulate those, but it is seen as a high-performing service. And nationally as well, if you look on page 5 of 34, it talks about the practice around youth rehabilitation orders, and how that the Northamptonshire model has been promoted nationally and is something that we should be proud of and the service should be proud of. Some points of note to me, that point around knife crime, the service is involved in that in schools, as Councillor Bowen mentioned. The work around the disproportionate amount of care leavers that enter the criminal justice system as corporate parents. I'm sure we all agree and support the work the service is doing there. And also around restorative justice. When I had Councillor Baker's role, I took a keen interest in the restorative approach to dealing with some of the issues, and the Youth Offending Service in Northamptonshire is again a national leader in this area. There are some challenges, and as I said, the service knows that well, in terms of some of the KPIs that it knows it's got to get better in re-offending rates and putting our young people back into education and training. Also, there's the uncertainty element around local government reorganisation and how the service in the future will look to work with the Children's Trust. But I think this is a very positive report. It's a service that is working very well in Northamptonshire, and I'm very pleased to second it to Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions from Councillor Birch?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's already been said that there's an amazing amount of really good work being done by agencies in this area. But again, I have concerns as a corporate parent about the children in care. A disproportionate number of young people with legal status come into contact with NYOS. It's children in care, children in need, child protection statements, children leaving care. In July 2018, this report states that 102 out of 102 children, 74, had that legal status. So a really high proportion of our care leavers and children in care end up working with this service. Early intervention for me is one, I've seen it work. I've seen the effects, and I've seen the effects of the reduction in early intervention, the closing of Sure Start centres, the way that austerity has closed down the youth services for the young children in particular. The children in primary school, they have very little in the way of services offered to them by the voluntary sector even. And all this has undermined the scaffolding, the support for children and their families. And I think this has a really detrimental effect on the resilience that families have to help their children overcome the vulnerabilities that leave them open to exploitation by criminal gangs, knife crime, and the drug county lines. And if we're to reduce the entry and the reoffending numbers of young people, I think we have to look very carefully at the numbers of pupils that are excluded, the permanent and temporary exclusions of pupils from schools, the work of the pupil referral units, and the number of homeschooled and out-of-school pupils. There are a whole cohort of young people that we don't really address in the way that we should, and they become the most vulnerable and subject to grooming, child sexual exploitation, being involved in crime, and reoffending. So those areas that I would like to stress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. It's always a pleasure for me to read the OS report. It's always done so really very well. And it is a really good example, I think, of really good partnership working. I'm told by those who know that YOS is successful because it stands slightly outside of the county. Don't quite know how I feel about that. But I'm also told it would be even better if it was much more integrated in a way. So, you know, a bit of a two-edged sword, that one. The biggest issue for me isn't exactly what happens to our young people when they come into the criminal justice system. It's about how we're going to prevent them from doing that. I am particularly concerned to read in the report that we still got race and gender issues in terms of over-representation of different demographics within the criminal justice system. And I really don't think that's on in this day and age. You know, we ought to know an awful lot more about how we're meeting the needs of different groups of young people, because it's when their needs are not being met that they fall foul of the criminal justice system. It's either that or because there are institutional barriers in terms of access to opportunities. I'm very well aware of the work that's going on around knife crime, and it sounds excellent to me. But is it enough? Is it enough? You know, if young people are not having their needs met, that is when they become susceptible to grooming and to the activities of gangs. And so we need to be looking much more closely, it seems to be, in how we're going to make sure all our young people have their needs met. I've just recently been working with youth providers and with youth who have just delivered their own conference, the first youth-led youth conference in Northampton. And the young people were really interesting because they were asked all day long, you know, what is it you need? And what they came out with is they need more social spaces. That was their biggest need. We all think young people are doing everything online these days. All the young people were adamant that they wanted more social spaces. They wanted more safe spaces. They wanted access to greater opportunities. One of the things that I find really heartbreaking, at this conference, we invited youth providers to come and run stalls. We had 45. Who knew there were that many youth providers out there struggling in their voluntary capacities to meet the needs of young people? Those organisations need two things. They need more recognition and they need more resources. And I suppose the third thing they need is more networking opportunities. I think YOS is doing a really great job. I think they need more help. I think they need to be able to signpost our young people to other activities across the county, and we need to be looking at more preventative work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Auger?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was good to read on page 32 about the reducing serious violence by early intervention. But we need to understand that the risk factors associated with young offending can be identified at a very young age. And I think if we are going to respond to youth criminality as a whole, we need to do more work in the, not so much intervening once they commit crime, but actually preventing them falling into crime already. We know the 6 major risk factors associated with youth criminality. We also know that in feeder schools, some of these young people are identifiable with regard to having these risk factors. Now, it is known that not everybody goes on to offend, but if you are a male and you have 4 out of the 6 risk factors, you are 80% likely to commit crime. So it's a case of trying to get in early, identify those. So not only I would hope that at some stage, not only just reducing serious crime, but reducing all crime by working closer with our education partners to try and deal with those young people that have these risk factors, so we prevent them coming into the system already. One of the biggest challenges we have with youth crime is that once they're carrying knives, once they're involved in organised crime, once they are committing acts of criminality, it is then more difficult to actually steer them away. But there is a chance, if we put enough money in the actual preventative stuff, that we have a chance to stop this youth crime epidemic that we have. And one other point about restorative justice, we also know that if restorative justice correctly applied in the right circumstances, where the victim and the offender want to engage, where the community have some involvement, we know that recidivism can be reduced. So it's about using all the tools in our toolkit. We know now more than we knew when I was involved in this area of business in the mid-1990s, and we need to start implementing tactics that are going to start making our community safer and preventing our young people from straying into criminality.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Meredith? Okay, thank you. Could I ask Councillor Bowen to reply?
Right, so going to Councillor Birch's comments about children in care, I think part of the battle to deal with this whole issue of criminality for children in care is actually understanding that there is a problem and actually focusing the plan on that. And that certainly is the plan going forward. Both Councillor Auger and Councillor Birch also mentioned about early intervention and prevention. Absolutely, that is the key. And again, this plan identifies that. Rome wasn't built in a day, so we need to work hard to implement that. Pupils excluded from school. Funny enough, I had a conversation with Councillor Baker this morning at about 7:30 about school exclusions. We know it's an issue. We absolutely know it's an issue. And in fact, myself and Councillor Baker have been feeding up at parliamentary level about this issue. So it is going to be tabled in the new year so that government can help us deal with this, because part of this is about schools that are managed by us and schools that aren't managed by us. And we need to have some sort of control over that so that the children aren't excluded where they don't need to be excluded. Councillor Stone talked about the integration of services. Absolutely, I completely agree. This is the start, and I think we are held up in high esteem in the UK, well, particularly in England and Wales, for this whole issue of integration of the police, of the magistrates' courts, of schools, and I feel that we can do more. Yes, we can do more. Yes, we can do more on race and gender issues, but this is a start, and we are doing as much as we can with the money that we are allocated, and we are constantly fighting for more money allocated to this area. As far as knife crime is concerned, is it enough? Is it leading edge? Yes, it is leading edge. We are leading edge in knife crime in this county, and we are known in the country as being leading edge, and we are talked about at national level. So we can always do more. Of course we can always do more, but we are playing our part, and we will strengthen this as we go on to be strengthened towards unitary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does Council accept the advice? Thank you. Item F, 1920 mid-year Treasury Update Report. If I could ask Councillor Longley to move the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For those that don't follow these things, this is the mid-year report from Treasury. It's already been to Cabinet, so it's been well aired in some areas, but I'll go through parts of it today. I don't intend to go through the report in detail, but I'm very pleased to answer questions. We're very fortunate in that we have an excellent Treasury team. Small, but very good, and I'll illustrate that with some of the windows that they've found for us and allowed us to go through. This is a year-end outlook on here as well, and the year-end outlook borrowing is 580 million. That's our expectation at the year-end. It's currently quite a bit higher than that, and the reason for that is the second highlight I was going to bring out, and that's the refinancing of in excess of 100 million pounds. We was short-term borrowing, and we've had an offer. We were borrowing at that time an average of 1.1%. We had an offer from the Public Works Loan Board of 1.68%, which we took up. And the reason we took it up is because the 1.1 was 1-year money, and the 1.68 is 40 to 50-year money. So we've got a predictable interest rate for nearly 50 years on that amount of money. Now, luck would be with us because the following week, and we didn't expect this to happen, the Public Works Loan Board put up the interest rate by 1 percentage point. So we're actually borrowing it better than we would have done, as it turns out. And that will save us money in next year's budget, I'm very pleased to say. The second point probably of interest is that we've also paid off £10 million as a LOBO loans. Now, I'm not going to go into LOBO loans. If anybody really wants to understand and follow them, just give me a call and I'll do my best to go through them. So those are the highlights, Chair. The current borrowing is more than the 580, and that's because of a cash flow issue. As the various short-term loans mature, we're covering them with the Public Works Loan Board money. So that's why there's a difference now, and that will come down as the year progresses. So I'd like to submit this report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Patel to second the report?
Mr. Chairman, pleased to second that.
Thank you very much. If I've got no one who wants to comment, sorry, Councillor Auger.
Yeah, just an observation, really. I think the journey this council has taken since the difficult times where there was poor financial management has been one where we should be commending our financial team and those actually that are leading it politically. You know, there is a real endeavour to make sure that the books balance, but also ensuring that we are providing the services for the much needed vulnerable people that we have in our community. To pick holes or to level criticism at this council. But I know from working with my colleagues here how much effort is put in to try to make sure that we get good value for money, to ensure we protect the vulnerable, and also that we live within our means. And I think sometimes we need to recognise that a little bit more. So I commend the council for their endeavours. I know they will continually doing that until vesting day. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any reply, Councillor Longley?
Well, that's quite easy, isn't it? That's fine, thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Does Council accept the advice? Thank you very much. Takes us on.
Families and community, the last budget of this authority. Let's do the best job, most thorough job we can in terms of scrutiny, and let's leave next year's budget, you know, going back to honouring that commitment that we're going to do everything we can, as Councillor August just reminded us, to leave the floor, Chair. Thank you.
McCutcheon. Any supplementary question? Okay, thank you. Question number 2, again to Councillor Smithers, from Councillor Julie Brook. Do you want the reply to be sent to you for the supplementary? Yeah, okay.
I'm really grateful for the information that Councillor Baker has provided. I think it's really important information, and I think it deserves scrutiny by all the councillors. So my question would be, information provided. I'd like to ask a question about what happens with adults with no recourse to public funds when they do not have children. At the moment, adults without recourse to public funds with children are protected under the Children Act.
The Stone again. Have you?
With your administration, which you did. And you say you took home welcome. Point 8, I went to that LGR programme and was very pleased to receive it and glad of the information it provided. The figure and when they've got nothing. And lastly, thank you for the information you sent out on the back of the report, Leader, because I also found that very informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stanborough.